Okay, so we're going to talk about the Berlin Wall today. So we'll start with the when and the why. So it was built on August 13th of 1961, and it was known as Stacheldraht-Sonntag, or Barbed Wire Sunday. And Germany at the time was split into 4 zones after World War II. But since Berlin was the capital in such a prominent area that they wanted to be a part of, it was split in 2 with the Soviets and the U.S. It was built by East Germany, and too many people were fleeing the East to go to the West. So that caused a really big problem for East Germany that they wanted to stop because they were losing such highly skilled workers, such as engineers, scientists, educators, and many others. And they called this the brain drain at the time. And East German officials, to more justify why they were so against West Germany, they went to the point of even saying that West Berliners still supported Hitler, and they thought that would kind of help him out.
And next is about kind of statistics about the Berlin Wall. So this is kind of a basic sorry, I thought I touched it down. This is a basic diagram about what the wall kind of would have looked like, and different pieces. But the ones that I found the most interesting were the tripwires, and it was because they were just kind of a high technology thing for this time period. But the tripwires actually would have been kind of more in this area, and it would have been if you were to get over the wall and to go try and get to the other side. If you hit this one tripwire, it would send up a flare that would signal kind of this is where you trip the wire at. And if you were to keep going any further and hit another tripwire and send up a flare of a different color to show how far you progressed into the wall. And then the other part that I thought was really interesting was the dog runs. They would have scheduled dog runs, and the dog would be on a leash attached to a wire, and they would just run along the wire to patrol.
And also 191 East Germans died trying to just cross over. So how it was built. So it's hard to believe, but they built it overnight while everyone was sleeping, pretty much so people wouldn't really have time to resist or react. And it started out as barbed wire, and they put concrete first in the most vulnerable areas, but eventually they put the concrete up everywhere. They restricted all methods of communication between the 2 sides. Telephone wires were cut, and East German workers actually built it, but they did so reluctantly because they were being watched by German soldiers who had machine guns in hand.
This was about the reactions of people to the Berlin Wall. Emotionally, it was a very tough thing for people because you were separated from your family members, from your friends, neighbors. Just kind of happened overnight. There was no warning. And so they were both sides were really devastated. But on the East Berlin side, it was more, it wasn't shown as much because the Stasi would kind of hide all of their reactions to make it seem like they weren't so against it.
Also, checkpoints had been reduced, which really surprised and angered West Germans. So in response, West Germany threatened a trade embargo, but Soviets weren't really fazed by that, so they threatened and said, if you do this trade embargo, we're just going to put up another blockade, which West Germany figured that's not really a good idea. So they didn't follow through with their threats, which ended up giving the Soviets a bigger ego than even before, and they blocked off even more checkpoints.
This is about the rebellion. Both sides kind of rebelled against the wall in their own ways, but most famously was the Eastern Berliners trying to rebel. And more interesting was the escape attempts. And my 2 favorite were a convertible attempt, in which a man rented a convertible, and he was trying to get his love interest and her mom to the other side of the wall. So he rents this convertible, and he actually took off the windshield. And when he got up to the checkpoint, he hid them in the back of the car. When he got up to the checkpoint, instead of stopping, he just floored it and went right under the bar of the checkpoint to the other side. And the second one that I really liked was the hot air balloon, in which 2 men and their wives and their families all built their own hot air balloon, and the women sewed together sheets and stuff to make the actual balloon part. And then they just flew over the wall in the hot air balloon. It took them about a half hour and landed safely on the other side.
Okay, so June 12th of 1987, Reagan stood in front of the Brandenburg Gate and made his arguably most famous speech that ended up being a challenge to Gorbachev and the highlight of his presidency. He's most known for saying, "Tear down this wall," but that almost didn't make the speech because a lot of the administration at the White House thought that it could be, it could sort of undermine what Gorbachev had already tried to do. But in the end, Reagan decided that it could be best for Germany. So he said it, and the Americans thought that it was a success, but abroad, people had different views. They said that it was a disaster, and they didn't really imagine that his speech should even start a process of tearing down the wall. So the wall was torn down by citizens on November 9th of 1989, but they weren't reunited until October 3rd of 1990. And it took Germany a lot of time to recover after World War II and then also being divided for so long. But now they celebrate German Unity Day every year on October 3rd, and this year was the 25th anniversary, so they did everything bigger and better pretty much. They had a lot of musical performances. Angela Merkel, who was the chancellor, who grew up on the East, did a lot of leading of these celebrations. And the coolest thing I thought was the 8,000 helium balloons being the marking of where the wall was, and they released them to signify the fall of the wall. So that's why we're excited.
Next, we have a little class discussion. So, many people in East Berlin were faced with the decision of whether they should stay in communist East Berlin or risk their lives trying to gain freedom by going to West Berlin. So, if you were an East Berlin citizen, would you try and escape it? And if so, how? Anyone volunteer? Brody.
Yes, I would try to escape, and I would skydive over the wall. No parachute.
Sam?
I would say no, because I would like to live and tell the tale to my grandchildren.
Mark?
I would escape to Russia, and then from Russia, I'd probably go down and get out, because they were just focused, I think, on people going over the wall, rather as if somebody just went around through Russia, they could escape peacefully.
7 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay.
So now we have a little video about the wall and kind of structure of it.
You can start.
You can stop it. Okay.
Yeah, because I